Caitlin Clark wanted to play. She was cleared. She was practicing. She was hungry. But head coach Stephanie White? She said no. And now, the entire WNBA is in free fall. Let's talk about what this really means. Because this isn't just about a superstar sitting out a game or two. This is about the biggest draw in women's basketball being benched when it mattered most. Not because she was limping, not because she was injured, but because of strategy. That's the official spin, right? Long-term health.
If you're here for the real story and not the filtered version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe.
We're protecting her. But come on, fans aren't stupid. We've seen the footage. We've watched her move. We've read between the lines of those very telling social media posts, like the now iconic, heartbreakingly simple, "I miss this so bad." That's not the post of someone at peace with being sidelined. That's the post of a competitor, a fighter, a generational talent being told she can't do what she was born to do. And for what? The truth? Nobody's buying the company line. Because what this looks like, and what it feels like to everyone watching, is a deliberate shutdown. A power move. A decision made not for the player, but for the politics. And that is absolutely explosive. Let's rewind for context. Caitlin Clark didn't just join the WNBA, she revived it. Her arrival brought in national attention, surging ticket sales, new fans, full arenas, and actual headlines. People who had never watched a minute of women's basketball were tuning in just to see her play. She was the moment. And somehow, in the middle of that momentum, the Indiana Fever decided to hit pause. They took their hottest hand and pulled it from the table, just before the playoffs. Why? There are a few theories floating around, and none of them are pretty. Some believe it's about internal tension. Maybe Clark's rising star was too bright, overshadowing the rest of the roster. Others think the Fever didn't want to risk a lackluster playoff performance, tarnishing her perfect narrative. The most cynical voices are even saying the team planned this to manage expectations, pulling her out before any postseason struggles could become a headline. But here's the kicker. Those theories? They're gaining traction because the Fever won't tell the truth. The statements have been vague. The explanation's empty. No specifics, no transparency, just generic concern wrapped in PR fluff. Meanwhile, the fans are watching their favorite player, healthy, eager, ready, sit in warm-ups, post cryptic messages, and suffer through the most frustrating kind of sidelining, the kind you can't fight. And that's what makes this situation so devastating. Caitlin Clark doesn't get a fight. Not for minutes. Not for clarity. Not even for her own voice. Every part of this has been decided for her, handed down like orders, then quietly normalized. And people are mad. Rightfully so. Because this doesn't just affect Clark, it affects the entire league. You want to talk about declining viewership? Look no further. The second Clark was benched, ratings dipped. Ticket sales slowed. The buzz quieted. People tuned out. Why? Because she's not just a player. She's the reason people are watching. That's not hyperbole. That's data. That's hard numbers. And the Indiana Fever decided to bench that. Let's not pretend this was some innocent, let's be cautious moment. You do not bench your franchise player, your league face, your walking marketing campaign, days before the playoffs, unless you have a very specific motive. And that motive? That's what has everyone talking. Because the fans aren't just speculating. They're demanding answers. They want to know why the team made this decision before Clark could even have a say. They want to know if the coaching staff consulted her, if her doctors approved, if the league intervened, if this was an internal politics move disguised as protection. And the longer the silence drags on, the worse it gets. And let's talk about Stephanie White for a second. A coach with a solid reputation, a tactician, a leader. But now, she's the face of this controversy. The one who said no. The one who pulled the plug. Was it her call alone? Probably not. But she's the one holding the bag. And here's the hard part. Coaching a generational player is hard. Managing egos, press demands, media scrutiny, it's a lot. But this wasn't managing. This wasn't strategy. This was stonewalling. You don't protect an elite athlete by denying them their moment. You work with them. You guide them. You support them. You trust them. And Caitlin Clark has done everything to earn that trust. She's played through pressure. She's taken the hits, literally. She's dealt with media frenzy, locker room politics, and more attention than most rookies see in a lifetime. And through it all, she stayed locked in. So when she says she's ready, you listen. Unless you don't want her back. Unless there's something else going on. And that's the most troubling theory of all. That maybe the Fever were never planning to make her the centerpiece. That maybe they saw her fame as a distraction. That maybe this whole shutdown is part of some twisted effort to take back control. If that's true, it's sabotage, pure and simple. Because if your organization's response to a breakout star is to pull the brakes, then you don't want a star. You want a product. You want a puppet. You want a name you can control without the noise. And that is the exact opposite of what the WNBA needs right now. Because this league is at a crossroads. It can either embrace the power of its stars, build around them, celebrate them, give them space to shine, or it can fall back into old patterns of control and containment. And trust me, fans know the difference. This isn't just about Caitlin Clark. This is about every future player watching this unfold. Every top college athlete thinking about their draft. Every young girl dreaming of the pros. They're all watching. They're all wondering, if they did this to her, what would they do to me? That's the real damage. That's the wound that won't heal with a press release. And when Clark does return, because make no mistake, she will, what does that look like? Does she trust the team? Does she trust the league? Does she even stay? Because the Fever just lit the match on a question that no one wanted to ask, but now can't ignore. Does Caitlin Clark owe the WNBA anything after this? Or should she explore other options, other leagues, other teams, other countries, even other sports empires that might treat her with the respect she's clearly earned? Because right now, it's hard to imagine loyalty lasting where trust has been broken. So where do we go from here? The Fever need to speak. The league needs to clarify. And Clark, she needs to be given the space and the platform to finally tell her side of the story. Because until that happens, all we have are the receipts, the footage of her practicing, the clearance rumors, the cryptic social posts, the empty seats, and the very loud silence from the people in charge. Let us know what you think. Was Clark benched for her health, or for someone else's agenda? Did Stephanie White make the right call, or has she become the scapegoat for a much bigger failure? And when Caitlin Clark returns, should it even be in a Fever jersey? Sound off in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. Because this story, it's far from over, and when the truth finally drops, it's going to hit hard. It's no longer about one coach's decision. It's not just about one player sitting out. It's about the entire system, the machine behind the game, and how it's treating the person who, ironically, built the hype train they're all riding. Let's get into it. There's something that's become very clear in all of this. The WNBA was not prepared for the monster they created. They wanted a star. They got a superstar. They wanted buzz. They got a cultural phenomenon. But instead of adapting to that scale, instead of leveling up the infrastructure, the messaging, and the entire ecosystem to match her presence, they just stuck to the old blueprint and hoped no one would notice. And now we all see it. The rules for Caitlin Clark don't match the rules for everyone else. And not in the way you'd expect. Not in a she gets special treatment kind of way. In fact, it's the opposite. She's being micromanaged harder, scrutinized more, controlled tighter. She's being told to carry the league, but not speak too much, not outshine too much, and apparently not play too much either. Think about that. She's being punished for being too valuable. Where else does that happen? Certainly not in the NBA. You think Luka or Ja or Braun are getting benched during their rise because of long-term strategy. Please, you let them fly. You lean in. You adapt around them. But here, with Caitlin Clark, it's like they want the profits without the power, the fame without the fallout, the exposure without the responsibility. And here's another angle that's not getting enough attention. What this means for athletes with real influence. Because Caitlin isn't just talented. She isn't just box office. She's also smart. She has agency. She has opinions. She has options. And those options make her dangerous to the people who like players quiet, humble, and obedient. So this whole sit down for your health narrative, it reeks of something else. Containment. Because if she's out there on the floor, winning games, doing interviews, and building her brand, she controls the story. But if she's sidelined, the league controls the narrative. The coach controls the spotlight. The franchise gets to say, we're thinking long-term while spinning the short-term disaster as a noble sacrifice. And it would be noble if we didn't already know Caitlyn was cleared. Practicing, craving the game, sending, I miss this so bad, into the digital void while the people around her gave us stock answers and tight-lipped smiles. And still, she hasn't lashed out. That's maybe the wildest part in all of this. She has every reason to clap back, every reason to drop the sub-tweet, go on a podcast, leak some behind-the-scenes tea. But she hasn't. And that restraint, that silence, that's power. It's also terrifying for the league, because the longer she stays quiet, the more the fans project onto her. And right now, the projections are clear. She's the underdog in a league that's supposed to protect her. That's not just a PR problem. That's an existential problem. Because if the most famous player in your league doesn't even look like she's being supported, what message does that send to everyone else? To fans? To future draft picks? To sponsors? It's one thing to mishandle a talent. It's another to publicly mishandle her while pretending everything is fine. And trust, sponsors see it. Networks see it. Agents see it. They're watching the league bench its biggest asset. And they're asking the same thing we all are, why? Why take her out of the game when she's ready? Why kill the momentum before playoffs? Why act like your franchise player is just another jersey in the locker room? Unless she's too powerful, too popular, too much of a risk to the pecking order. Because make no mistake, when Caitlyn Clark walks into a room, the spotlight follows her. And maybe that's the problem. Maybe the Fever weren't ready for that. Maybe Stephanie White wasn't ready for that. Maybe the WNBA as a whole wasn't ready for someone who changed the game before she even played a full season. So they pulled her back, tried to slow her down, tried to reassert control. But here's the part they didn't plan for. You can't unmake a superstar. You can bend her body, but not her brand. You can write her out of the lineup, but not out of the conversation. You can pull her off the court, but the fans, the sponsors, the world, they're still watching her. And every day she sits, the pressure builds. Because when she does return, the expectations will be through the roof. And that's not just a Caitlyn Clark problem. That's a league problem. How do you handle a comeback when people are still angry about the disappearance? How do you sell tickets when the fans don't trust the team? How do you recover from the perception that you mismanaged the one thing that made people care? This isn't just about a sidelining anymore. This is about credibility. And that's where the league is on thin ice. Because if they lose that, if fans start to believe that players are being shut down for politics, not protection, if the locker room vibe turns toxic, if the trust between stars and coaches breaks down, then this isn't a league on the rise. It's a league in regression. And here's the most damning thought of all. What if Caitlyn Clark leaves? What if she plays out her contract and dips? What if she takes her millions and goes international? What if she signs with a rival league, unrivaled, athletes unlimited, whatever startup tries to poach her next? Because now, she has the leverage to do it. Before this drama, people might have said she'd never leave the W. But now, after all this, she could, and people would support her. Not just because she's that good, but because she's been that disrespected. And that's a storyline the WNBA cannot afford to write. Because Clark is more than just a rookie. She's more than just a shooter. She's proof of concept. She proved the WNBA could be must-see TV. She proved a women's athlete could dominate headlines. She proved the next generation wants this, that they're paying attention. But what did the league prove? That it still doesn't know what to do with success when it arrives too fast. So here we are. Caitlyn Clark is ready. But someone decided she wouldn't play. And the silence from her team? It's louder than ever. The question isn't just, will she return? It's what happens when she does. Will she trust them? Will she forgive them? Or will she remember what it felt like to be told no? Not because she wasn't able, but because she was too powerful. Caitlyn Clark, she is the lightning. And the Indiana Fever, they're still standing there with an umbrella, trying to act like this storm wasn't forecast months ago. But now, as the outrage continues to build, and the decision to sideline her gets more confusing with every day she stays off the court, a darker, more uncomfortable layer has started to emerge. We're not just talking strategy anymore. We're not just talking about protecting a player. We're talking about ownership, not in the contract sense, in the tone of this entire situation. Because there's something undeniably paternalistic about the way Caitlyn's shutdown is being framed. We know what's best for her. She needs to rest. She'll thank us later. It's the kind of language that treats elite women athletes like children who need guidance, not professionals who deserve respect. And if that doesn't make your blood boil, it should. Because Caitlin Clark isn't a rookie asking for direction. She's an empire in sneakers. She's carried more cultural weight in 6 months than most athletes carry in a decade. And yet, when she says she's ready to play, that she wants to play, the answer isn't let's talk about it. It's sit down. That's not protection. That's possession. That's an organization deciding they don't just manage the team. They manage the narrative, the timing, and the voice of their most valuable player. And it raises a serious question. When did the league stop seeing Caitlin Clark as a person and start seeing her as a product? Because that's what this feels like. And fans feel it too. This isn't just about basketball anymore. It's about control, agency, and how women athletes are still being treated like they don't know what's good for them. It's outdated. It's patronizing. And it's dangerous. Let's talk optics again, because everything in professional sports is about perception. Clark has been the most visible athlete in the WNBA all year. She's on commercials, on your phone screen, in your feed, on your TV. She's the hook, the headline, the get. And now, her story has been hijacked by a franchise that seemingly doesn't want her to have a story unless they write it first. That's not just a misstep, it's a PR disaster. Because right now, the Indiana Fever don't look like they're managing an injury. They look like they're managing a threat to the status quo, a threat to the coach first, team above all culture that the WNBA has clung to for years. And in case it's not obvious, that culture is cracking. Because when your most powerful asset is also your most silenced one, something is very, very wrong. Now let's take a moment to look at how this controversy is playing out beyond the WNBA. Because it's not just sports fans talking about Caitlin anymore. It's journalists, cultural critics, entertainment writers, business columnists. Everyone is asking, how does this happen? How does a league finally get a star capable of transcending the game? And then bench her, mute her, and let her voice get drowned out by red tape and vague press statements. You know how? By not preparing. By not having the structure in place to support a talent this big, this fast. The WNBA built the stage, but forgot the script. They brought in the audience, but didn't train the actors. They opened the theater, but when the main stars stepped into the spotlight, they panicked and pulled the curtain. That's what this is. And it's not just affecting Clark. It's affecting every player in the league. Because the message being sent, loud and clear, is that no matter how much you give, how much you grow, or how many people show up for you, someone else still holds the reins. That's a chilling reality for any athlete to face. And it's why fans aren't just mad, they're scared. They're scared that this will become the norm. That the next breakout star, whether it's Angel Reese, Juju Watkins, Paige Buchers, whoever, will be met with the same cold shoulder the moment she threatens to overshadow the league systems. Because what we're seeing right now, it's not about injury. It's about precedent. And the precedent being set is, if you get too big, we'll find a reason to bench you. You don't have to look far to see how this could spiral. You think agents aren't watching? You think young talent isn't taking notes? The whispers are already there. Be careful. They want the fame, but not the fallout. They want the clicks, not the complications. That's not a healthy league. That's not a player-first league. That's a machine. And Caitlin Clark is stuck in the gears. Now, let's address something that's been floating around, but needs to be said loud. What does this do to Caitlin's legacy? You might think, she's just starting, how can she have a legacy already? But that's the thing. She does. She has one of the most iconic college careers of all time. She changed how women's basketball was covered. She became appointment viewing. And now, in her first season as a pro, her story has been completely taken out of her hands. You think that doesn't matter? It absolutely does. Legacy isn't just built on stats. It's built on storytelling, on narrative, on how we remember moments. And right now, The most dominant narrative around Caitlin Clark isn't about her insane shooting range or her court vision or her clutch performance under pressure. It's about how she was benched when she wanted to play. Let that sink in. And the most tragic part? She might not even get a chance to change that story this season. Not because she can't, not because she's injured, but because someone else said no. And that's where this story goes from frustrating to infuriating. Because we're not just watching a star get sidelined, we're watching a legacy get stifled. And for what? To maintain control? To avoid criticism? To protect her future? Here's the thing they forgot. Caitlin Clark is the future. She doesn't need protection. She needs partnership. She needs a league that walks with her, not ahead of her. She needs a franchise that trusts her, not one that treats her like a marketing gimmick with legs. And most of all, she needs space to be great, without strings, without silence, and without a system that pulls the plug when the lights get too bright. So we'll ask it again. When she returns, if she returns to this team, what will that relationship look like? Will it be reparable? Will it be real? Or will it always have this shadow hanging over it? Let us know in the comments what you think. Did the Indiana Fever cross a line? Did the WNBA blow the biggest moment in its history? And if you were Caitlin Clark, would you stay? Because from where we're sitting, this wasn't just a rest decision. It was a message, and it's one that everybody heard. Subscribe for more deep dives into the biggest meltdowns, betrayals, and moments that define the sports world. Because in a league full of potential, sometimes the biggest scandal is silence.